All right, we're on. Play it forward. Emily Dell, welcome.
Hello.
What's shaking?
Well, good morning. Really happy to be here.
Thank you. I know you just got back from Atlanta.
I did. I was on a project that for almost 3 weeks, and so it's 10 a.m. bright and early, but not super early in LA. So I'm still recovering, but hopefully I'm enough of my interesting self that I'm not going to disappoint anyone out there.
I'm sure you're not going to disappoint. Let's say you are writer, director, and editor of Troubled Youth.
Today we're talking about Troubled Youth. I've done a bunch of stuff before that in horror and action and hip hop dance, and I even have a graphic novel that'll be in bookstores later this year. But for Troubled Youth, I did the triple whammy of writer, director, and editor.
All right, cool. And you're nominated by Samantha Shada.
Yes.
Of Beauty School. And I'm super, she's a very cool, intelligent person, and I'm really glad that she's nominated you, and I look forward to diving into our usual 3 questions about Troubled Youth, which is an interesting, we don't necessarily do a lot of horror stuff, so it's a little bit against the mold, which is cool. So why, as an artist, were you inspired to make this film about this topic in this way? And
so I should preface this by saying this is a piece that was created with the digital studio Crypt TV. And so I knew that I was making something for Crypt, which is why it is the length that it is and why it lives on their platform. And I went through, in fact, a development process, which is pretty standard in Hollywood when you're working with a studio. And this is a small studio and it's digital only, and they work at things that are like in the 3 minutes to 8 minute range, but it still behaves like a studio, which meant that I started from an idea. We went through development, which is like notes and making sure the script worked to fit the Crypt brand. And so I would say that Troubled Youth is definitely an Emily Dell film. And in fact, my sister produced it, so we're proud to call it a Dell Sisters film, in that it is evocative of the stories that I want to be telling and the themes I want to be exploring. However, it's specifically me fitting that into the Crypt TV brand. It was a piece of work for hire, but that doesn't mean it doesn't represent me. I mean, what Crypt wants is fresh voices. They want to be kind of creating cool new horror. And so this was a chance. There were certain things that I had to, I'd say, pivot the work specifically for the Crypt brand, but but the core theme, the core story that I wanted to tell is always about the cheerleader. Like, this is Troubled Youth is about a cheerleader and a monster. And the final shot, which is the cheerleader and the monster walking down a destroyed high school hallway, was the inspiring image behind the entire story. And so I don't feel like I ever compromised my vision in any way to fit for Crypt. In fact, they embraced it. What I did do early on is in early conversations with them, I realized I actually had a couple of other ideas we were talking about first, and we just realized those were not naturally the best fit. And there's nothing wrong with that.
If I can just cut you off, I think, so I get it. It's very interesting. And I think the most interesting thing that we can discuss about your vision and the kind of the inspiration of it, that's like, why as an artist did you make this film? It's like, oh, okay. So what's up with the vision of the cheerleader as a monster, essentially? And, where does that come from? And what high school did you go to?
I know, right? Good point. Let's go to the story, the meat of it. Hey, cheerleaders kind of scare me. But I think
I don't think you're alone in that.
No,
not to obviously what is it, pigeonhole or bias or judge cheerleaders, which
I also think that they're fantastic, and part of what the way that they scare me is this like aspiration of like wanting to be like them. That I've always, you can't not be wrapped up in their energy and be excited by cheerleaders.
Well, it's kind of like, so in some high schools, I think like the predominant American myth is like cheerleaders are the hot chicks and they're like, oh my God, that's like the in crowd. But that's not the case in all high schools. In some high schools, cheerleaders are the geeks.
Yeah. And in fact, I had a bunch of friends who were cheerleaders in high school, and they were just like, they were my arty friends, or they were my my brainy friends. And in fact, they really enjoyed the kind of camaraderie and the just like getting together with their friends and dancing aspect of being a cheerleader. And I just like, I was like, oh, that's a cool looking uniform too. Like, it's awesome. And specifically for my character, whose name is Eva in Troubled Youth, she's somebody who, the backstory, and we worked really closely, me and the actress, is like, she's angry about something, and we don't learn what she's angry about, but she's really angry at her classmates. And yet she's the opposite of a person who you would think is angry. Like, to zoom out a bit more, frankly, Troubled Youth has echoes of a school shooting. And that's really difficult material. And in fact, we were making this before Parkland, and it came out before Parkland. And I think it's just a testament to how horrible our current world is, that like, this had happened so many times already that it's a thing in the zeitgeist. Like, that's just, I don't know if I can swear on this, but that's just so horribly fucked up that we live in a world where there is this thing called a school shooting, and it happens all the time. And so I wanted to explore also, like, the person that you think does that kind of stuff is also usually fits in a certain box that we expect looks like a certain thing and acts like a certain thing. And I wanted to show that it could be the opposite of that. Literally the tagline of Crypt TV is monsters within. And so for all that Troubled Youth is a piece about a cheerleader or a monster, who's the real monster here? It's the person who brought this evil thing into a space and to attack people. It's not actually the evil thing itself.
Okay.
So it's just to say that, like, it was, even in editing, so in the way that we build the suspense and in the way we were cutting, in horror movies, there's always something called the reveal, which is like the moment you first see the shark in Jaws, the moment you first see the monster or the ghost or whatever it is. And I actually was really careful in editorial that all that tension builds up actually to the reveal of the cheerleader as her evil self. It's actually, and then after that, you finally see the monster, and that's cool too. But it just meant making sure that that the monster that's revealed is actually the Eva as the monster.
Okay, so like getting to that idea of the monster within, and so there's so many ideas there in terms of like this horrible kind of idea or paradigm or false paradigm that we have, or of who a bad guy looks like, and whatever context that might be. And then you're talking about a cheerleader as this unconventional bad guy, and your own image of the inspiration for this film being a cheerleader being this monster that's unexpected. So kind of bringing all that together, where did that inspiration land in for you? What do you think is motivating your experience and having this unconventional monster, bringing it to life? I mean, we can kind of go, it segues right to the next question, which is, what is an artist really trying to say with this?
I'm trying to say that even the last person you think has evil inside of them can have that inside of them. Yeah.
Okay.
And that is like, yeah, it's like, don't just expect a certain bad thing to be exactly what your expectations of it are.
Okay. Well, I think, from a humanistic point of view, I mean, I get what you're saying in terms of, hey, everybody, no matter what shape and size they're in, they have the capacity to do inflict pain on others or suffering on themselves.
Actually, yeah. I mean, I'm not even saying that like every single person has a monster, because I don't believe it. I think, especially, we have monsters of different capacity. Usually it's often, as you were about to start saying, it's often self-referential. Like we can be really mean to ourselves. And I don't think everyone that's out there walking around has the capacity to bring a gun into a school. I think that's an extreme example. I just also think that even amongst extreme behavior, it doesn't always have to look like the person that we think it's going to look like.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think the value of that is?
I think it fundamentally at its core, I always try to ask people to re-examine their expectations, to check the way that they think things should be or always are.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I get that. I mean, that's definitely important to do in any context, whether you're, challenging your own perspective of being right in an argument with a loved one or a friend or whatever it might be.
Yeah, but you were starting to say, like, and I think we can go back to it.
Yeah.
Everybody does have these. Everybody has demons, and those are equally valid. Like, I think, in fact, a previous piece that I did that we almost were going to talk about in this is about a person who's this horrible monster comes to life, and it actually is based on their own anxiety, and so it's very much like a personal demon coming to life.
Uh-huh.
So I love that same that kind of same thread of emotional monsters. It's just this is a much more kind of like externalized monster in this one.
Well, and I guess that leads to the question of how best have you learned to handle those internal monsters, or how can you recommend, based on your experience, handling them?
I meditate.
Yeah, me too.
So I really believe, especially those of us who are artists, there's an aspect to our demons that you have to you kind of harness to be creative. And so you have to understand that, like, it's your weirdness that makes you interesting. And so you have to have a conversation with it and get to a workable, get workable strategies for living with it without like ever eliminating it. Not even because it's still useful. Like, if you can make your demons useful for you in a productive way, that's fantastic. That's the win. Most of the time, like, they're just things that we live with. They're never going to fully go away. Whether we're talking about addiction or self-doubt, or even it's a great example in A Beautiful Mind, where he has, the friend and the little girl that he sees, and he realizes they're not there, but he's going to see them for the rest of his life. He just learns not to look at them. And so it's strategies for dealing with that and dealing with that in a healthy context.
Cool. Well, this brings us to the last question, and thank you for that. The last question is, how, as a human or a filmmaker, have you been changed by this film or even the prior one? And that can be on or off the set.
There's a lot of very, very technical things. Like, Troubled Youth was a chance for me to do a very elaborate special effects makeup for the first time, and working with prosthetics and working with creature performers and having to go through like a lot of stages of of testing it out and makeup and wardrobe and like that was that really leveled up my technical skills as a director, which was really enjoyable. It also, I think, leveled me up learning very specific suspense pacing, especially because I cut it myself. I was able to try it and then test it and then try it and then test it and try it and test it and really get my hands like physically in it, which was really useful. But I also think that what I enjoy about this is, a couple of years ago, I kind of wrote out a manifesto about what I make. And it was only three points to it. And it was, don't make anything unless it's at its core, it has something that feels human and true. Number two, the thought of sitting in the dark and watching it sounds like fun. And three, really, really good actors. And it's not like I wrote that, as a little girl deciding to start out in this movie journey. No, I wrote that after almost 10 years of making stuff and learning from my mistakes and starting to realize what is actually important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am proud that I was able, that like Troubled Youth lives up to those things. It feels human and true. It's also fun. And the only reason those things work is because it's well acted. And, you know, people say in genre, you can get away with bad acting because there's like stabs and stuff that make it exciting. I don't believe that. Definitely not. Definitely not. I actually, I cast the lead in Troubled Youth because she had this, in the audition process, she had this beautiful vulnerability, because you have to believe that for the reveal to work, you have to believe she's afraid. And she comes off so beautifully afraid, and you really like, you're caught up in your chest for her. And then it makes it the payoff like of like, whoa, even that much higher. Mm-hmm. And so I guess this manifesto is only a couple of years old, and only a couple of projects fulfill it, but I'm proud to see that living by those ideals also leads to work I'm proud of, but leads to work that also the market has responded to. By now, Troubled Youth is at more than 6.5 million views. I'm incredibly proud of that, because Crypt has a sizable audience, but we figured we would tap out at 1 to 2, just based on their existing audience. And the fact that we're still at 6.5 and we continue to grow, in fact, after a couple of months, has to mean that people like it, right? You know, maybe they're sharing it, maybe they're telling their friends. And that is all I want to do, is I want to make things that fulfill my ideals as an artist, but that also people respond to. Because sure. I think those are the same thing.
And the number one thing on that manifesto was, again?
It has to have something at its core that feels human and true.
Right, human and true. And so, you know, when you were talking about, and I wasn't going to go into this, but since you said that, that's the number one thing on your manifesto. You know, I think for a long time, this was, it's a commentary on what you were talking about, like the struggles or the issues that artists or anyone really has can be their strengths. And I certainly believe that. I certainly believe that, you know, healing through those wounds is really important and deepens people, and intellectually and emotionally helps them grow. But me personally, just in case you might be curious, I don't believe in the myth of like the troubled artist being the genius. Mm-hmm. I think that was perpetrated in a way to sell art, and I think it's propagated in a way to continue to sell art. And I actually think that clarity of mind throughout time, if you look at great thinkers and great artists that last the test of time, there's a certain clarity that only comes from health and a healthy mind. So that's my personal feeling on it, and I am inspired to share it because I just don't want to see. I've been one of those artists that thinks, oh yeah, I'm just like, wasting.
I'm completely with you. Yeah. It's overly simplistic to be like, oh, because I have torture in me, that means I'm going to be a great artist. No, I'm completely with you that it's clarity, but actually I think even, and this isn't just in my ethos, it's even more important to have diligence and work ethic. Because sure. you can have a tortured background. Okay, that's not like, maybe that's worth something. You can have a great story to tell from that has emotional truth. That's maybe worth something else. But you have to have this kind of like nuclear bomb of a fire in your belly that gets you up every morning. And contrary to this morning, I get up really early, you guys. I get up 6 every morning, and you're working every single day. And that's what separated Picasso from all the other people who had, and even they talk about Beethoven and his father, who drilled in him this intense work ethic. Yeah. Like just having those artistic impulses is not enough. In fact, it's not even 50%. It's probably closer to like 20%. And that just getting and doing, and then getting up and doing it again and doing it again, that's 80%.
Yeah, after failure, and repeated failure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't. Yeah. And it's interesting to track that of like through people we call geniuses through the years, that somebody who might have had an inspiration close to Picasso but painted 2 paintings in his life, we're not going to remember that guy or that girl. He had some sort of intense work ethic that trained in him always working, always working. Even when as he became an older man, he could have just quit and been like, I have money and I'm gonna.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's a very, very great point. I appreciate you sharing that. So, Emily, that's it. Really happy to have you on the show. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And Emily Dell with Troubled Youth.
Thank you.
We look forward to more. Please keep us posted.
Will do. Have a great day.
Cool.
Bye.
You too. Bye. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in this week. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and leave us a like and or a comment. It makes a big difference. Play It Forward is brought to you by Digipops, where we're building a community to put film and filmmaker discovery in your hands. Here, filmmakers and fans, the creative class, recognizes each other fairly and transparently through a community-curated film festival each quarter. It's coming soon. Thank you.